At Royal Heights University, students came from rich families, wore fancy clothes, and spoke big words. The walls of the university were filled with awards, trophies, and photos of famous professors. It was a place of pride, dreams, and success. But in the quiet corners of this proud place, there was a man no one looked at. His name was Dev. He was the janitor. Every morning before sunrise, Dev entered the university with his mop and cleaning cart. He wore old shoes, a brown uniform, and a simple cap. His face was always calm. He didn't talk much. He didn't smile much. He just cleaned the floors, the windows, the benches, without a sound. Students passed by him every day, laughing, running to class, never stopping to say hello. Some even joked behind his back. "Look, there goes the floor genius. Maybe one day he'll mop the blackboard too." But Dev never said a word. He just did his job and quietly listened. What they didn't know was this. Every night, after the classrooms were empty, Dev didn't leave. He stayed back. He walked into the big math lecture hall, picked up a piece of chalk from the desk, and started solving math problems on the board. Yes, the janitor who cleaned the floors was a math genius. Dev had a small notebook he always kept in his pocket. It was full of numbers, symbols, and formulas. He solved puzzles most people couldn't understand. But no one knew, because Dev never told anyone. It was his secret. One night, something strange happened. A famous professor had written a math problem on the board. It was part of a global competition. Mathematicians around the world had tried solving it, but failed. The professor left the problem on the board, saying, "Let's see if anyone in this university can solve it." Dev stood there that night, looking at the question. He stared at it for a long time. Then, slowly, he picked up the chalk and began to write. His hands moved quickly. His eyes were full of focus. Step by step, line by line, he worked through the problem like a master. It took him over an hour, but finally, he finished. Then he quietly erased his name, left the classroom, and continued his cleaning work like nothing had happened. The next morning, the professor came to class. He looked at the board and froze. What? Who solved this? The students turned their heads. They were just as shocked. Some took pictures of the board and posted them online. Within minutes, everyone was talking about it. Who solved the impossible problem? No one came forward. Is it a prank? It can't be a student. This is genius-level work. Dev walked past the classroom quietly. He heard the noise. He saw the crowd. But he said nothing. He just pushed his mop down the hallway like always. In the corner, a young girl named Annika, a math student, noticed something. She saw Dev looking at the board from a distance. There was something in his eyes, a calmness and a spark. She watched him carefully. He wasn't surprised by the solution. He already knew it. Could it be him? She whispered to herself. Later that night, Annika returned to the math hall, hiding in a corner behind the door. She waited quietly. And just like before, Dev came in. He looked around, made sure no one was watching, and picked up the chalk again. This time, he began solving a different problem from his notebook. Annika watched in silence. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened in shock. The janitor, the man everyone ignored, was solving problems faster than her professors. She wanted to scream, to ask him how to record the moment, but she stayed silent. She wanted to understand first. Who was this man? Why was he hiding his talent? That night, Annika couldn't sleep. Her mind was racing. Who is Dev? Why is a genius like him cleaning floors? She decided she was going to find out the truth, even if no one believed her. The next morning, the campus was buzzing. Students rushed through the halls, not for class, but to see the math board. The impossible equation was still there, completely solved. Everyone gathered outside the math hall. Some took selfies in front of the board. Others whispered and pointed. Who do you think did it? Must be a visiting professor. Maybe someone hacked into the university just to play a prank. But no one had an answer. Professor Sharma, the head of the mathematics department, stood in silence, staring at the board. He knew this solution wasn't ordinary. It was not just correct. It was elegant, clean, and deep. Whoever solved it wasn't just smart. They were brilliant. He called a special meeting. All top students were gathered. Annika sat in the front row, still thinking about what she saw the night before. Her heart beat fast. She had kept the secret to herself, unsure if anyone would believe her. Professor Sharma looked at the students. Someone among us, or someone unknown, solved a global-level math problem, he said. We want that person to come forward. You will not be punished. In fact, we wish to honor you. The room was silent. No one moved. No one raised a hand. Annika wanted to speak, but something stopped her. What if Dev didn't want to be known? What if she exposed him and ruined his peace? She kept quiet, for now. Later that day, Annika watched Dev from a distance again. He was cleaning the staircase, his eyes focused on the floor. The same man who had solved the problem was being ignored by everyone around him. A group of boys laughed loudly as they passed him. Hey, janitor, clean faster. The dust is smarter than you. Everyone laughed. Dev didn't reply. Annika's fists clenched. They didn't know. They had no idea. They were mocking the genius. That evening, she walked up to him while he was cleaning the library hallway. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. Dev looked up, surprised. No student had ever called him sir. "Yes," he replied, his voice calm. I saw you, last night, solving the problem." Dev's eyes froze. For a second, he said nothing. Then he looked away. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Annika stepped closer. "Please don't hide. The whole university is trying to find the person who solved it. Why won't you come forward?" Dev sighed. He leaned against the wall, eyes looking far away, as if remembering an old pain. "I used to dream once," he said quietly. "A long time ago. I was good at math. I got a scholarship to a big college. But life had other plans." "What happened?" Annika asked, her voice soft. "My father died in an accident," Dev said, still not looking at her. "I was the only one who could earn. My dreams didn't matter anymore. Feeding my family did. So I took a job, then another. Slowly, I forgot the dreams. I became invisible." Annika's eyes filled with tears. "But your talent, it's still alive." Dev gave a small smile. "Talent doesn't feed hungry mouths. Numbers don't pay bills. I didn't want to be noticed. I just wanted to solve, for myself." Annika stood there, speechless. She had never heard anything so honest. "Will you help me?" she asked suddenly. Dev looked at her. "I want the world to see what I saw. You shouldn't stay hidden. Not anymore." Dev didn't reply. He simply picked up his mop and walked away. The next morning, Annika did something bold. She went to Professor Sharma's office and showed him a photo she secretly took of Dev solving a problem on the board. "I think the janitor solved it." The professor's eyes widened. He took off his glasses. "Are you sure?" Annika nodded. "I watched him. He didn't just copy something. He understood it. Deeply." Professor Sharma didn't say anything for a while. Then he stood up and said, "Bring him to me." Quietly. Annika knew this was it. The beginning of something bigger than she ever imagined. And Dev, his quiet world was about to change forever. Dev didn't want to go. When Annika came to him the next evening and said, "Professor Sharma wants to meet you," Dev shook his head. "No, I'm just a janitor." "But you're more than that," Annika said, her voice full of emotion. "You solved something no one else could. You can't hide anymore." Dev sighed. He looked at his hands, the same hands that had held chalk and mops. "I've lived in shadows for so long," he said quietly. "I'm not ready for light. But Annika didn't give up. "Please, sir, just meet him once. No one will laugh. I promise." After a long pause, Dev nodded slowly. That night, Annika walked beside him through the quiet university halls. The campus was dark. Only a few lights were on. Dev looked around nervously. They reached Professor Sharma's office. Annika knocked gently. "Come in," came the reply. Dev stepped inside. Professor Sharma stood up when he saw him. He didn't smile. He didn't speak right away. He simply walked to the side, picked up a marker, and pointed at the whiteboard. "Can you solve this?" he asked. It was another unsolved problem, different from the last. Dev looked at the board. His eyes scanned the numbers. His mind, sharp and steady, started working. He didn't speak. He just walked up, picked up the marker, and began writing. For the next 10 minutes, the room was silent. Annika watched, holding her breath. Professor Sharma stood completely still. Dev's hands moved with confidence, not fast, not slow, but with the calm of someone who knew what he was doing. Finally, he stepped back. The problem was solved. Perfectly. Professor Sharma looked at the board, then at Dev. "Where did you learn this?" he asked. Dev lowered his eyes. "I used to study math in college, a long time ago." The professor sat down slowly. This is brilliant." "I don't want fame," Dev said quietly. "I just like solving problems." Professor Sharma leaned forward. "But you're not just solving problems. You're solving history. You're a hidden genius." Dev smiled weakly. "Maybe once. I was." Annika finally spoke. "He told me his story. He gave up everything for his family. But his mind never gave up math." The professor nodded slowly. "We need people like him. The world needs to hear this." But Dev shook his head. "I don't want cameras. I don't want attention. I just want peace." Professor Sharma looked at him with respect. "Then we'll start small. Quietly. Let us give you access to our research room. You can study. Teach, if you agree." Dev's eyes widened. "Me? Teach? You have a gift, Dev," said the professor. "Don't lock it away." Dev didn't answer right away, but something in his eyes changed. A small light flickered. A dream long buried, waking up again. The next few weeks were strange at Royal Heights University. A few students noticed Dev no longer carried a mop. Instead, he carried a notebook. He spent hours in the math lab, quietly reading, solving, helping students who didn't even know his name before. Annika sat with him every evening, learning more in 2 hours than she did in a week of lectures. Whispers began again. But this time, they were different. "Isn't that the janitor from before? Wait, he helped me solve my final project. He's kind of a genius, isn't he?" One day, Dev was walking past the same group of boys who used to mock him. This time, they stood up when he passed. One of them said, "Good evening, sir." Dev stopped, surprised. He smiled, just a little, and walked on. One evening, Professor Sharma invited Dev to a small meeting in the staff lounge. A few senior faculty members were there. They offered Dev a part-time research assistant role. Dev hesitated. His hands trembled as he held the paper. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I've never been. Anything official." Professor Sharma smiled. "You've already proven yourself. This is just the beginning." Dev signed the paper. And just like that, the janitor became a part of the academic team. Not for fame, not for money, but for the love of math. Outside the building, Annika waited. "Well?" she asked. Dev smiled. A real full smile. "I guess. I'm back in school." Dev was no longer just a janitor. At Royal Heights University, his quiet presence now carried respect. He didn't walk with a mop anymore. He walked with books, papers, and sometimes a group of students following him with questions. Every day, someone would ask, "Sir, Can you help me understand this? And every time, Dev would sit down, explain with patience, and leave students surprised by how simple he made everything sound. But still, his story wasn't known to the world. Not yet. One day, Annika was sitting in the university cafe, thinking about everything that had changed. She looked at Dev's old photo she had secretly taken the night he solved the math problem. Then she opened her laptop and began to write. They laughed at him because he cleaned floors, but they didn't know he was a silent genius. This is the story of Dev, the janitor who solved a math problem no one else could. She wrote about his past, his sacrifice, and his hidden talent. She didn't mention his full name, just called him Mr. D. Then she uploaded the story to a popular student blog. She didn't tell Dev. 2 days later, the internet exploded. Who is Mr. D? Math janitor. Is this a movie or real life? A floor cleaner solves what professors couldn't. Thousands of people began reading and sharing the story. Big education pages reposted it. YouTubers made videos. News channels started calling Royal Heights University. And then, the biggest shock came. Harvard University tweeted, "We want to meet the man they call Mr. D. True talent can rise from anywhere." Dev had no idea what was happening. He didn't even use the internet. He was walking to class when Annika ran up to him, her phone in hand. "Sir, it's you. You're going viral." Dev looked confused. "Viral? Am I sick?" "No." Annika laughed. "The world knows your story. Everyone's talking about you." He took the phone from her hands and slowly read the headline. "Unknown janitor solves global math problem. Even Harvard is watching." His hands shook. His breath caught. "Who wrote this?" he asked. Annika looked down. "I did." Dev sat on a nearby bench, silent. "You shouldn't have done that," he said softly. "I'm sorry," she said, "but I couldn't let the world stay blind. You deserve this, sir." For a moment, Dev closed his eyes. All his life, he had run from attention, from dreams, from the pain of not being able to finish what he started. And now, the world was knocking. Later that evening, Professor Sharma entered Dev's study room with a letter in his hand. "This came for you," he said with a smile. Dev opened it. The letter had a golden seal. It was from Harvard University. They were inviting him to speak at an international math seminar. Not just as a guest, as an honored speaker. Dev didn't know what to say. He looked at Annika, who was standing beside him. "Me? Speak at Harvard?" he whispered. "Yes," she smiled. "It's your time." A week later, Dev stood on a stage in front of hundreds of people. Professors, scholars, and students from around the world sat in the audience. Cameras flashed. News channels recorded. Dev looked nervous. He held the mic with trembling fingers. Then he spoke. "I am not a professor," he said. "I'm not a famous mathematician. I cleaned floors for most of my life. But I love numbers. I never let that love die." The hall was silent. "My message is simple," Dev continued. "Don't judge someone by their job, their clothes, or their silence. Great minds can hide in the quietest people." When he finished, the entire room stood up. A standing ovation. Dev stood there, tears in his eyes. For the first time in years, he didn't feel small. He felt seen. Back at Royal Heights, everything changed. Dev now had his own small office in the math department. Students came from other colleges just to attend his sessions. He even started an evening class, Math for All, where anyone could come, no matter their background. He made one rule for the class: no fees, only love for learning. And in the back row of every class, the janitors of the university now sat too, smiling, learning, and finally feeling respected. The sun was setting behind Royal Heights University. Golden light poured through the windows of the lecture hall, where Dev stood quietly at the front of the class. It had been 1 year since the world had discovered the janitor who solved the impossible. But for Dev, Life hadn't become about fame. He didn't buy a big house. He didn't chase interviews. He still walked to work every day, carrying the same old bag, wearing the same soft smile. But now, he walked through respect. Students greeted him with admiration. Teachers nodded at him with pride. Even the ones who once laughed behind his back now looked at him with awe. That evening, Dev was preparing for his special class, Math for All. He looked at the chairs filling up. Some students wore expensive clothes. Some wore old, torn shirts. Some were janitors. Some were cleaners. Some were kids from nearby villages. But in Dev's class, all were equal. He wrote a simple sentence on the board. What matters is not where you start, but what you carry in your heart. The room grew quiet. Then Dev spoke. I was once just a boy who loved numbers, he said. But life was hard. My father died. I had to leave my dream behind. I cleaned floors so my family could eat. For years, I was invisible. He looked around the room, eyes wide, listening. But I never stopped learning. In small notebooks, at night, between mopping halls and scrubbing walls. I never let go of my dream, even when the world did. Someone in the back wiped away a tear. Dev smiled gently. You may feel small now. Maybe people laugh at you, but never let their words become your truth. A small boy raised his hand. He wore an old shirt, and his shoes had holes. Sir, he said, I want to be like you, but I'm just a cleaner son. Can I still dream? Dev walked over and knelt beside him. He looked the boy in the eyes and said, You are not just anything. You are everything you believe you can be. Dream big, work hard, and never be ashamed of who you are. The room filled with soft claps. Outside the hall, a reporter stood waiting. She had followed Dev's story for months, hoping to get one final interview. When Dev stepped out, she asked, Sir, what do you want the world to remember about you? He paused, then said softly, Not that I solved a hard problem, but that I never stopped trying, even when no one was watching. Later that night, Dev walked home under the stars. His hands were no longer rough from mopping, but strong from holding chalk and hope. He passed by the same building where students once threw paper at him. Now, a poster hung outside. Guest lecture tonight. Professor Dev, from janitor to genius. He chuckled. Professor, me. But deep down he knew he had become more than any title. He had become a symbol, a lesson, a light for the invisible dreamers of the world. One last time, he opened his old notebook, the same one he carried when no one believed in him. He turned to the first page. There, written in faded ink, were the words he had once written to himself in pain. I am not nothing. Dev smiled. And below those words, he wrote one final line. I am proof.